Welcome to the start of the 2021 Macabre Month of Horror. If you're new to Brickwall Pictures, the Macabre Month of Horror is a yearly series I do where I spend October reviewing horror films from all around the world. I decided to kick off this year's horrific festivities by counting down my favorite horror movies of all time. This is a gargantuan list, and it's going to be a little long. A top 10 seemed a little too limited, so I was considering doing a top 20, but then I thought, screw it, let's do a top 100. I've seen so many horror movies, and there are without a doubt 100 that I can fully recommend. Honestly, it got a little difficult to keep the list to just 100. I had to cut a lot of films that I greatly enjoy. Plus, my personal list is frequently being updated as I see more brilliant horror films for the first time, and I revisit old ones and my opinion might change a little bit. Now, I have put this list into a general order, so let's start at the bottom and work our way up. This is absolutely not a list of the 100 best horror films, but my personal 100 favorites. And I do like some schlock and cheese and B movies from time to time, so, I can assure you my top 100 looks nothing like most top 100 horror film lists. And you'll notice I said general order, which means I do like the films at the top of the list more than those at the bottom of the list, but the specific film-by-film order isn't too particular. Plenty of these films could slide up or down a few places, and it wouldn't really make too much of a difference. It's ordered, but not overly ordered, if you know what I mean. At any rate, I'm going to impose a rule of one film per franchise because it would get a bit boring if I had a bunch of films from the same series on the list. So only one per franchise, meaning no sequels, remakes, reboots, or crossovers either, or alternate adaptations of the same source material. I'll tell you up front, there are some major horror films that don't make my personal list. Carrie, Child's Play, Get Out, Jaws, none of them made it into my list. Even Friday the 13th missed a cut, just barely, the whole franchise. So, what is on my list? Well, let's get started. 100. Antiviral. While it's far from perfect, I think Brandon Cronenberg, son of legendary horror director David Cronenberg, made a winner with his first film. Possessor got a lot of buzz recently, but I prefer Antiviral. The premise is just so goddamn good. It's the kind of concept that I wish I came up with first. It's a sci-fi future where the mania around celebrity status has ballooned bigger and bigger to the point where fans are getting themselves injected with strains of diseases that their favorite celebrities have. Brilliant. 99. Maniac Cop 2. This one is just a ton of sleazy fun. The first Maniac Cop is entertaining too, but this sequel ups the ante on every level and adds genuinely insane stunt work. Surprisingly great car chases, a wonderful supporting character in Turkel, and the unforgettable Maniac Cop rap in the end credits.
Set him on fire, I shoot him with a Uzi, but he'll show up in your jacuzzi.
98. The Last Man on Earth. I'm a sucker for anything post-apocalyptic. If you've read my novel, The Fall of Polite, then you already know how much I love the post-apocalypse as a setting. The Last Man on Earth is simple and restrained, but wonderfully atmospheric and perfectly paced. Vincent Price easily balances the entire film on his shoulders for most of the runtime. 97. The Abominable Dr. Phibes. 2 Vincent Price films in a row. What a coincidence. This is a pretty wacky one, but Vincent Price is just so great in it. It's quite unique in the world of horror, unless you count the sequel. 96. You're Next. A fun twist on the slasher and home invasion subgenres. 95. REC, or R-E-C, however you want to say it. One of the best found footage films ever. Incredibly intense. Do not bother with the American remake Quarantine, as it just does everything worse. REC 2 is also very good. 94. Dog Soldiers. From director Neil Marshall, a name that will pop up once more on this list. It's a fun action-horror hybrid, especially in the last act, that gets great mileage out of the werewolf genre. 93. The Mist. Fucking hell, that ending. That's really all that needs to be said. I hope to see the black and white cut eventually, as it makes a ton of sense for the style of the film, and seems to even improve the presentation of the visual effects from what I've seen. 92. Hello, Mary Lou, Prom Night 2. Now, I don't give a shit about the original Prom Night, but this sequel is a ton of fun. And it's also not really a sequel, so you don't have to watch the first one. It's completely unrelated, underrated, and way better than its more famous progenitor. 91. Pieces. Fucking hilarious from start to finish. My all-time favorite good-bad movie. We actually did an episode of our Why Are We Watching This series on Pieces way back. And that series was kind of like a dumbed-down version of Red Letter Media's Best of the Worst. Check out that video if you want to have a little watch-along.
While we were out here fumbling with that music, the lousy bastard was in there killing her! Bastard! Bastard! Bastard!
90. Under the Shadow. This film deserved so much more attention than it got. It's an Iranian drama horror that is socially powerful and gets great creepy mileage out of a simple bedsheet. 89. Basket Case. This is the pinnacle of sleaze. Frank Henenlotter knows how to get so much mileage out of absolute trash. This is not the last time he shows up on this list. 88. The Black Coat's Daughter. From director Oz Perkins, who I plan to dedicate a video to eventually. The Black Coat's Daughter is positively dripping with atmosphere. Phenomenal sound design and cinematography cover for somewhat of a thin plot. I also really like his I am the pretty thing that lives in the house, which most people seem to have hated, but worked for me. 87. The Curse of Frankenstein. This is the first Hammer Frankenstein film. I had to get a Hammer film in here because I love them. I'm counting a later film on this list as my one Dracula film, though, so I couldn't put any of the Hammer Draculas on here. Otherwise, I would. Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, and the Hammer blend of trash and class. What's not to love? 86. Eyes Without a Face. Great old school horror. The highlight is, of course, the centerpiece surgery sequence, which is filmed with stark simplicity. 85. The Blair Witch Project. An incredibly important film for horror, found footage, and indie filmmaking as a whole. It's not really the first found footage film, as people often like to say, but it was a breakthrough example that set all of the standards to be followed in the future. It can feel a little tame these days, but if you get yourself into the right headspace of the time, it's still an effectively creepy watch, and I like to revisit it every once in a while. 84. Inside. Goddamn brutal, as one should expect from the new French Extremity. It's a pregnant woman being viciously attacked for an hour and a half. Intense, gory, and definitely pulls no punches. 83. Red State. I like Red State way more than most people seem to. Kevin Smith's leap into the horror genre worked for me. His subsequent horror films absolutely did not work for me, but this first one did. Maybe I'll make a Deserves More Respect video on Red State eventually. 82. In the Mouth of Madness. I talked about this one in my How to Film Chaos video essay. Check out that one for a breakdown of the diner axe through the window scene. I love John Carpenter. Honestly, most of his films could have made it out of this list, but I had to draw a line somewhere. 81. Apostle. Another one that seemed to fly a little under the radar and or be a little coolly received. I had a ton of fun with Apostle, and not just because I'm a massive fan of Gareth Evans' Raid films. It's gory, it's creative, and unpredictable as it unfolds, which is a major strength in my book. We actually have a full review for this one from right when it came out, so check out that video to learn more. 80. Night of the Creeps. It's just a total blast from start to finish. Tom Atkins absolutely steals the show. Consider me thrilled, sir.
Thrill me.
79. Zombie, aka Zombie 2. AKA some other stuff, but who cares? It's the Italian zombie film from Lucio Fulci that was pretending to be a sequel to Romero's Dawn of the Dead, which was called Zombie Overseas, even though there's absolutely no connection between them. Nevertheless, it's a great cheesy zombie flick with unforgettable moments like the shaft of wood through the eyes, that Molotov cocktail showdown, and the incredible zombie versus shark fight. 78. Shadow of the Vampire. Did a review for this one a few Macabre Months of Horror ago. Check out that video to learn more. Links to all of these, by the way, are in the description. There's going to be a ton of videos in there that you can check out. 77. Mother. I was surprised by how divisive this one was. I love it. It reminded me in the best ways of my favorite Darren Aronofsky film, Pi, which I almost included on this list, but it isn't quite horror enough. But Mother crosses the line into horror territory. It's a great example of nightmare logic played out to the extreme. 76. Mobius. Check out my full review for this one. A totally unique horror film without a single word of spoken dialogue in the entire film. Grotesque, disturbing, and 100% original. 75. Cat People. This is Paul Schrader's Cat People, and it's insane in the best ways. Two great lead performances, surprising story directions, and a killer David Bowie theme tune. 74. Audition. I reviewed this one in the 2018 Macabre Month of Horror. Check out that video to hear more. 73. Calvaire. I reviewed this one too. Check that video out. Calvaire is a film that I continue to grow to love more and more as time goes on. I watched it on a complete whim, knowing nothing about it, and I have yet to hear a single other person even mention Calvaire. It wheedled its way into my brain, and I think about it regularly. Supremely underseen. 72. An American Werewolf in London. Easily one of the best werewolf films. Funny throughout, and it has a transformation sequence that still has yet to be topped, and probably never will. 71, The Blob, the 80s version. I don't really care about the original The Blob, but the 80s remake is fucking badass. I'm already working on a script for Deserves More Respect video about this one. 70, The Devils. I have a review for this one coming later on this month in this year's Macabre Month of Horror's festivities. So, hang tight and check that video out when it gets released. 69, The Serpent and the Rainbow. Possibly Wes Craven's most underrated film. I never hear this one get talked about. Bill Pullman's great in it, and Craven gets the absolute most out of every scare moment. Though there is one major plot hole. Bill Pullman gets his dick nailed to a chair, then has sex like a day later. That does not sound sanitary, my guy. 68, Black Christmas. Black Christmas was at one point underrated, but I think the horror community has successfully rectified that issue and turned Black Christmas into a late budding classic. It's a great POV slasher that predates Halloween. A lot of people call it the first true slasher instead of Halloween, but guys, come on. Texas Chainsaw Massacre came out before both of them. Why does Tobe Hooper never get credit for making the first slasher? I mean, sure, it only came out like 10 days before Black Christmas, but that still counts. 67, The Vanishing. Arguably more of a thriller than a horror film, but I think it counts. I have a review for this one coming later this month in this year's Macabre Month of Horror as well. So, make sure you're subscribed to check that out. 66, Profondo Rosso, aka Deep Red. My favorite Dario Argento film and my favorite Goblin soundtrack, which is honestly a big part of why it's my favorite Argento film. Goblin is badass, man. This is cool horror. 65, The Killing of a Sacred Deer. Yorgos Lanthimos is one of my favorite filmmakers, and this is one of his best films. It's strange that it got so much less attention than The Lobster and The Favorite, which are both great as well. 64, Brain Damage. This is one of those films that I wish I saw when I was younger. I only saw it for the first time earlier this year, and I just know that I would have been obsessed with this film if I saw it when I was like a freshman in high school or something. That's besides the point, though. Brain Damage is a total blast, and I'm already looking forward to watching it again. 63, Train to Busan, a South Korean zombie film that somehow became a worldwide phenomenon. Deservedly so. It's great. The Peninsula sequel sucks ass, though, so just skip that one if you don't want the series to leave a bad taste in your mouth. 62, The Witch. Robert Eggers left such a signature with his debut feature. Probably the best working director at period piece horror. It's a remarkable piece of work. 61, The Wailing. A crazy South Korean mashup of many different horror subgenres that all somehow blend together as a cohesive whole. I reviewed this one a couple of years ago, so check that one out to learn more. 60, The Wolf of Snow Hollow. From writer-director star Jim Cummings, who quickly became one of my favorite directors in recent years, this is his fresh and distinctive take on the werewolf genre. Definitely check it out if you haven't seen it, and keep your eyes on everything Jim Cummings does in the future. 59, Angst. I reviewed this one a couple of years ago. Check out that video to learn more, but it's actually one that has grown on me a lot since that initial review. My fondness for it has increased through rewatch and reflection. 58, Society. This movie is okay to pretty good throughout, then it rockets into the stratosphere with one of the best horror endings ever. The Shunting is all I need to say for those of you in the know. If you've never heard of Society, just go in blind, right? Just let the experience hit you like a freight train. And if you're kind of bored or whatever throughout the beginning, just stick it out. 57, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The 1978 remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers is so fucking good. It's grand in scope and absolutely gripping from the first frame to the last. Great cast, sound design, and escalation all throughout. 58, The Descent. The other Neil Marshall film that I teased earlier. A fantastically made film that does not at all betray its low budget. We actually played through The Descent as a Dungeons & Dragons campaign here on this channel. Check that out if you want something a little different. Again, links are in the description. 55, Cabin in the Woods. A brilliant tribute, parody, and deconstruction of the entire horror genre. 54, Woman in the Dunes. I have a review for this one coming later this month in the Macabre Month of Horror, so stay tuned for that video. 53, One Cut of the Dead. A brilliant concept executed with earnesty and what was essentially a student film gone global. You might think it kind of sucks for the first act, but just stick with it. The film is not what you think it is. 52, Suspiria, the remake actually. I like Dario Argento's Suspiria quite a lot, but the remake shocked the hell out of me. I did not expect to love it as much as I did. The two versions are extremely different too, so it's not like one replaces the other. This is a beautiful film that is rewarding on many levels. 51. Midsommar. Ari Aster's second at-bat in the horror genre was another hit. Midsommar seemed to really break through to broader audiences in a way that great horror films rarely do. It had the reach of those shitty pedestrian horror movies like Paranormal Activity and the Insidious sequels, while actually being a great horror flick. 50. The Lighthouse. Visually stunning, perfect sound design, and two phenomenal performances. The Lighthouse is a towering achievement. 49. Mandy. A synthesis of the stylings Panos Cosmatos explored in Beyond the Black Rainbow, now refined to a point of perfection. I have a review for Beyond the Black Rainbow coming later this month, by the way. This is such a clear and complete vision, and is aesthetically brilliant. 48. Raw. A fucked up and surprising horror film from France. The less you know about it before jumping in, the better. 47. The Birds. And the master of suspense rears his head. Hitchcock didn't really work very often in the horror genre, more often in thrillers and mysteries, but goddamn could he execute a great horror flick. 46. Tucker and Dale vs. Evil. Fucking hilarious. A brilliant parody of slashers and the hillbilly horror subgenre with great chemistry from the leads. 45. It Follows. A fresh horror concept executed perfectly. All around excellence. 44. Bone Tomahawk. Would be higher if there was a higher concentration of horror. But the horror really only comes in at the very tail end of the film. But goddamn does it leave a strong impression in just about 15 minutes. We played through Bone Tomahawk as a D&D campaign on this channel, so give that a watch. 43. From Dusk Till Dawn. The midpoint shift from action crime film to vampire horror film is perhaps my favorite plot turn in all of cinema. That kind of major genre and tone shifting is something I'm constantly pursuing in my own writing. 42. Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. Brutal and intensely disturbing. A serial killer film like no other. Places full emphasis on quiet realism to unnerving effect. Michael Rooker is perfect in this role. 41. Shutter Island. Scorsese's leap into the horror genre is as brilliant as one should expect from a master filmmaker such as himself. I might be one of the biggest fans of this particular film out there. It seems to get overlooked or downplayed fairly regularly, but I can't get enough of it. I've seen it so many times, and it always feels just as fresh and inventive. 40. Gozu. From director Takashi Miike. I reviewed this one in the Macabre Month of Horror a couple of years ago, so check that video out. It's a wild one. 39. The Omen. I'm planning to do a video essay on this one eventually, so I'll hold my tongue for now. 38. Maniac, the 2012 version of Maniac. I like the original Maniac from the 80s too, but I actually much prefer the Elijah Wood remake. I fucking love this movie. The use of POV is unique and effective, the soundtrack is killer, and the film is brutal as hell. I made a video essay about this one a couple of Macabre Months of Horror ago, so check that video out to learn more. 37. Poltergeist. A deserving classic. The face-ripping scene scared the hell out of me when I saw it as a child. Poltergeist 2 is worth watching as well, if for nothing else than for Reverend Kane. Far and above the best aspect of that sequel. 36. Return of the Living Dead. Easily one of the best zombie films out there. Tons of fun, great gore, memorable characters, and endlessly quotable. 35. Candyman. Candyman, Candyman, Candyman. No idea how the upcoming remake will fare, but the original Candyman is a fantastic story, executed wonderfully. Great score, great lead performance, but of course it's Tony Todd in the titular antagonist role who steals the show. The sequel, Farewell to the Flesh, is actually a good watch too. 34. La Casa Lobo, aka The Wolf House. Quite possibly the most incredible feat of animation I have ever witnessed. I have a review for this one coming up later in the month, so check out that video to learn more. 33. Lake Mungo. I reviewed this one in the 2018 Macabre Month of Horror. Check out that video to learn more. 32. 28 Days Later. Perhaps the best in the zombie genre to play everything completely straight and be totally devoid of levity. It's a bleak, nasty vision of the zombie apocalypse, and I love every second of it. 31. Psycho. Hitchcock returns to the list. Of course Psycho needs to be on here. It's a true masterpiece. It's impossible to overstate just how influential Psycho was to not just horror, but cinema as a whole. I was talking about how Texas Chainsaw Massacre deserves the first slasher title over Black Christmas, but honestly, doesn't Psycho kind of deserve it? Or maybe the body count's too low, I don't know. 30. Rosemary's Baby. a masterclass in tension and precise direction, top-notch performances, and front-to-back execution. 29. Hereditary. I reviewed this one right when it first came out. At the time, I was afraid it might be overlooked, but luckily that wasn't the case. It's a brilliant horror film, and the most recent horror film to make it this high on the list. 28. Martyrs. This one was covered in the Macabre Month of Horror from a couple of years ago. Check out that video to hear more. Martyrs is from the new French Extremity, and it's brutal and clever in equal measure. 27. Shaun of the Dead. A perfect horror comedy from director Edgar Wright. A send-up and tribute to the zombie genre with a perfect cast, soundtrack, and sense of humor. And it even gets appropriately dark in the right moments. Great stuff, highly rewatchable. 26. Enemy. I absolutely adore this film, and it would probably land a little bit higher if not for the fact that it's not fully a horror film. It's debatable if it is at all. It's firmly in thriller territory, and I made a whole video essay about how it's more unnerving than most horror films. Check out my video essay about how Denis Villeneuve creates a sense of dread in Enemy for that analysis. 25. A Nightmare on Elm Street. Wes Craven's undeniable masterpiece, and the best of the long-running franchise by far. I hear a lot of people argue that Dream Warriors is the best, but man, I do not at all agree with that. 24. From Beyond. Most people probably wouldn't put From Beyond up this high on their list if it made it onto their list at all, but I love me some Stuart Gordon, Jeffrey Combs, Barbara Crampton, H.P. Lovecraft, horror comedy goodness, and Ken Foree is a wonderful addition to the RE-ANIMATOR team. From Beyond will make you look at pineal glands in a whole new way. 23. Maximum Overdrive. I dedicated a video in my Deserves More Respect series to this one. Definitely watch that video to see why I love Maximum Overdrive so much. I'm definitely in the minority on this one, but I absolutely love this film. So much fun, I could watch it anytime. 22. Black Swan. Black Swan is a masterpiece, plain and simple. Elevated, elegant, and psychologically disturbing. I still see people try to say it's just a ripoff of that Perfect Blue anime. You guys know Aronofsky bought the remake rights to that movie because of its similarity, right? It's not a ripoff. 21. Nosferatu the Vampire. I reviewed this one in a past year's Macabre Month of Horror too, so check out that video for more detail. It's Herzog's take on the Nosferatu mythos, and it's by far my favorite vampire film. 20. The Shining. Of course, The Shining would be high up on this list. Honestly, I know plenty of people would put it in the number 1 spot, or at least in the top 5 or 10, but what can I say? This is where it ranks for me. 19. Inland Empire. When it comes to David Lynch, who I'm obviously a massive fan of if you've been around this channel for a while, I tried to limit to his eligible films to only the ones that have the greatest concentration of horror. They all pretty much have elements of horror, but they aren't all horror films through and through. But Inland Empire is. Check out my David Lynch tier list to see where I rank it amongst the rest of his filmography. 18. Dead Alive. I had the pleasure of seeing Dead Alive for the first time at a midnight screening in a packed movie theater, and it was just an unforgettable experience. I've never heard such raucous laughter in a theater before or since. Goddamn hilarious from start to finish, and a serious contender for goriest film ever made. Forget all that Hobbit bullshit. Peter Jackson, do another splatter flick. 17. Possession. This film deserves a much larger reputation and fan base than it has. Sam Neill and Isabella Adjani give 2 incredible animalistic performances, and the entire film is fantastically constructed, from story to cinematography to special effects. It's bizarre and brilliant. 16. Grindhouse. That includes Planet Terror and Death Proof. This one's a double whammy. It's kind of to, sneak 2 films into one spot here. Grindhouse is a double feature from Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino, comprised of Planet Terror in the first half, Death Proof in the second half, with fake trailers and commercials and stuff in the middle. I absolutely adore both halves of this double feature. And all of the fake adverts and trailers in between just make that experience so much better. 15. The Fly. Easily one of Cronenberg's best. Body horror in its purest form. Goldblum is perfectly cast, but Gina Davis deserves a good bit of credit for her part as well. But really, it's the special effects that are the star of the show. And they deliver more than you could ever hope for. 14. Videodrome. And what do you know? Another Cronenberg film. 2 in a row here. It was tough deciding between The Fly and Videodrome, so that's why they're here back to back. Videodrome is such a wild and inventive script. It's honestly crazy that this story got told in this form. It seriously goes off the rails, but in the best possible way. 13. Hellraiser. Clive Barker's best directorial work, bar none. Hellraiser is a masterpiece on many levels. 12. The Exorcist 3. I dedicated a video in my Deserves More Respect series to this one too, so be sure to check out that video for all my thoughts on it. I consider this one of the most underrated films ever, not even just in the horror genre. And every line of Brad Dourif's performance is permanently etched into my brain. I have a Deserves More Respect video coming up for another Brad Dourif film later in this year's Macabre Month of Horror. 11, Halloween. So I nearly put Halloween 3 in this spot, but I just couldn't dethrone the original. Halloween 3 is the one film, more than all the others, that makes me want to break my one film per franchise rule. Just know that it would absolutely be high on my list as well. Check out my Halloween 3 Deserves More Respect video to learn why. And we're into the top 10 now. Number 10, RE-ANIMATOR. I already mentioned it briefly discussing From Beyond, but RE-ANIMATOR is just endlessly entertaining to me. I love the cast, the gore, the humor, everything. Bride of RE-ANIMATOR is great too. Number 9, The Thing. This is the last John Carpenter film on my list, and arguably his best work, even though it was actually a box office bomb upon release, which is just insanity in retrospect. The special effects are unsurpassed, but that's not to discount the more restrained moments and the wonderful atmosphere and sense of tension that Carpenter crafts. Number 8, Under the Skin. Holy shit, did this film surprise me when it came out. I did not see such brilliance coming when I put it on for the first time. If you happen to see my 2014 Brickwall Film Awards video before it got blocked worldwide by bullshit copyright claims, or my Best of the Decade video before that one also got blocked worldwide from bullshit copyright claims, then you know how much I love Under the Skin. You know I gave it a bunch of awards when I repicked the Oscar categories. Special mention needs to be paid to the original score by Mika Levy, which just might be my number 1 favorite film score of all time. It's a big part of why the film works so well for me. Number 7, Fire Walk With Me. I don't know if people will push back on this one or not. I guess some people don't consider Fire Walk With Me a horror film, but I think it absolutely is. I've spent so much time talking about Twin Peaks already on this channel, just collectively, so just go check out those other videos to hear more. Number 6, Silence of the Lambs. Now, people continue to debate over whether or not this is really a horror film or just a thriller. I say, fuck you, it's a horror film. And it's one of my absolute favorites. Seeing this film at a young age left a deep imprint on me. The film and book of Hannibal kind of sucks, and Hannibal Rising really sucks. But Manhunter, the Red Dragon novel, and the Hannibal TV show with Mads Mikkelsen are all great as well. Number 5, Alien. The extent to which I love Alien is what drives my utter disdain for Prometheus and Alien Covenant and all that bullshit. Aliens is fantastic too, but it's pretty far outside the horror genre, I think, while Alien is a perfect blend of sci-fi and horror. Number 4, Eraserhead. And this is one last David Lynch entry to round out the list. Eraserhead was his first feature film and also his purest horror film, I would say. The experimental elements are beautiful. I could soak in this movie's world for hours and hours. The atmosphere is as thick as you can get on planet Earth. Number 3, Evil Dead 2. This is the perfect blend of horror and comedy. You'll notice there were quite a few horror comedies on this list. It's a subgenre I really love. But most of them, including a lot of the best, land more squarely on the comedy side than the horror side, for the simple matter of it being hard to be genuinely creepy while also making audiences laugh. But Evil Dead strikes that balance perfectly. It's wild, inventive, hilarious, gory, and an inspiration to myself and many indie filmmakers. Number 2, Dawn of the Dead. This is such a comfort film for me. Watching Dawn of the Dead is like wrapping up in a warm blanket on a chilly autumn evening. I love every moment of this film dearly. And now we're at number 1. It's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I cannot say enough good things about the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Of course, it has achieved classic status by this point, but I still genuinely think that it doesn't get the true credit it deserves. I could write a fucking book about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I'm not ruling it out. If some nonfiction publisher wants to give me a book deal to write about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I will snap it up in a heartbeat. I love this film with all my heart, and it is my number 1 favorite horror film of all time. Which is hard to say, but, there it is. Okay, holy fucking shit, that was a lot of movies. God damn, I am out of breath. I am tired. Oh, okay, anyway, stick around for the rest of the Macabre Month of Horror. We're just getting started with this year's festivities. So make sure you're subscribed to Brickwall Pictures for everything else I got coming out this Halloween season. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.
Happy, happy